We have Spotlight caches officially confirmed for September, and thanks to data miners, we know it's likely coming up in October and November as well. Let's go ahead and dive on into the best times to be using your Spotlight keys in the upcoming months. Our first Spotlight cache for the September season contained Silver Sable as a new Series 5 card, US Agent as a returning Series 5 card, and Mockingbird as a returning Series 5 card. This Spotlight cache week gets a perfect 5 out of 5 star rating from me. Our strong rating this week comes for a variety of reasons. To start with, Mockingbird has consistently been a metagame defining staple since she released, with even her nerf back to 6 energy not meaningfully slowing her down. She's a mainstay in a number of powerful decks consistently, and she doesn't have a clean replacement that matches her at a similar power level. US Agent is probably the weakest card in this Spotlight Cache week, I would estimate. I think he's still incredibly strong. US Agent is a card that was buffed to giving -4 for -3 shortly after he left his Spotlight Cache, and I actually think he's one of the stronger cards in Marvel Snap right now that a lot of people simply don't have in their collections because they skipped pulling for him that week he released. Finally, our new card released this week, Silver Sable, I would wager is probably part of the reason Beast got nerfed to 3 points of energy. I think she is very likely to be one of the premier 1 energy cards in Marvel Stat moving forward. At her base value, she is a 1/3 that essentially doesn't have a downside. And if your opponent ends up playing out the card that she shrunk, she essentially applied 5 points worth of power for just 1 energy on your side that you could play out anywhere along your curve. Our next September cache, running from the 10th through the 17th, contains Madam Web as a new Series 5 card, Alioth as a returning Series 5 card, and Silk as a returning Series 4 card. Overall, this Spotlight Cache week gets a fairly middling 2 out of 5 star rating from me. Madam Web is the primary appeal to the Spotlight Cache week, in my opinion. I think she's very likely to be a staple in movement decks going forward, so if you're a move enjoyer, it's probably worth prioritizing picking her up. Alliance sees regular play in like Wiccan decks and fringe things like Super Giant Control, but I don't think it's an absolutely necessary must-have card in those decks, make or breaking them. And Silk doesn't really see play in anything top tier at the moment, and she's only Series 4 to boot. Our next Spotlight Cache, running from the 17th through the 24th in September, contains the Spanish Spider as a new Series 5 card, Sage as a returning Series 5 card, and Miss Marvel as a returning Series 5 card. Overall, the Spotlight Cache week gets a fairly strong 4 out of 5 star rating from me. I think all 3 of the cards in the Spotlight Cache week are excellent pickups if they're missing in your collection. Our new card is likely to be a staple in movement decks moving forward. Sage sees play as a generically good 3-drop in a variety of things, as well as a full-on combo enabler in decks like Mr. Negative and Wong. Miss Marvel is just a generically good stat stick, providing 14 points worth of power for just 4 energy. She sees play in fringe things like Lockout, as well as being a staple in ongoing decks featuring Spectrum. Our next Spotlight Cache runs from September 24th through October 1st. It contains Scarlet Spider as a new Series 5 card, White Widow as a returning Series 5 card, and Scar as a returning Series 5 card. Overall, I think this is another solid Spotlight Cache week, and I'll give it a 4 out of 5 star rating. White Widow is the biggest draw this week, being one of the generically best 2 energy cards in Marvel Snap who's quite popular. While you can play her in anything, she has express synergy inside of decks that are looking to clog up the opponent's board or beasting back your cheap on reveals to your hand to play them out again. The other 2 cards in this week are pretty reasonable as well. I would wager Scar tends to be an archetype defining card, meaning you can't play decks that he's contained in without him. And Scarlet Spider, while a new card release, feels like it has a ton of potential, especially with things like Gwenpool and others that can power it up before you duplicate him. As we look ahead into October and November Spotlight Cache, I would just like to iterate again that this is working off of data mined information, so it is subject to change. That being said, both the September and August Spotlight Caches remained exactly as data mined, so there's a good chance this information remains as is. We kick off our October Spotlight Caches running from the 1st through the 8th with Scream as a new Series 5 card, Man-Thing as a returning Series 4 card, and Mobius as a returning Series 4 card. Overall, the Spotlight Cash gets a fairly mediocre 2 out of 5 star rating from me, while Man-Thing and Mobius both see some amount of play. They aren't mainstay must-have cards in the metagame and haven't been in some time, and they're both Series 4 cards to boot. The main draw this week, I think, is the new card release in Scream, which how desirable that ends up being definitely is going to remain to be seen how good Move is after it gets new cards in the September season. It is worth noting that Scream can be a little bit of a build around since you can punch your opponent's cards around with things like Polaris and Arrow to get triggers on it, but I would wager this is probably a week that most people can save some keys. Our second October Spotlight week, running from the 8th through the 15th, contains Misery as a new Series 5 card, Nomura as a returning Series 5 card, and War Machine as a returning Series 5 card. Owning the Spotlight Cash Week, a fairly strong 4 out of 5 star rating, with that strongly being based on Nomura, in my opinion, being one of the strongest cards in Marvel Snap that a lot of people just don't have in their collection right now. I think a lot of people undershot her power level on release, and her archetypes have consistently been some of the highest performing things in Marvel Snap on the public trackers that have exceedingly low play rates, I would assume because most people just don't have her as a card. The new card release this week, Misery, I think also has a lot of appeal. It's a very unique effect that's going to have strong synergy with things like Hood or Electro and others. And lastly, War Machine is definitely the weak link this week, not really being a must-have card or staple anywhere to be found. Our next Spotlight Cash, running from October 15th through the 22nd, contains Scorn as a new Series 5 card, Sebastian Shaw as a returning Series 5 card, and Jean Grey as a returning Series 4 card. Overall, I'm going to give the Spotlight Cash Week a fairly middle of the road 3 out of 5 star rating. Sebastian Shaw is a key enabler inside of Silver Surfer decks, consistently being one of the largest stat sticks that archetype has access to, and Silver Surfer has consistently been a top performing deck throughout the history of Marvel Snap. He also is seeing play in more fringe decks that are doing hand buff things with cards like Gwenpool. Scorn feels like she has a ton of potential inside of discard shells, and I wouldn't be surprised if she's a staple there moving forward. Lastly, Jean Grey, definitely our weak link this week, does not see any amounts of regular play in Marvel Snap currently, and is only Series 4 to boot. Our next October cash, running from the 22nd through the 29th, contains Toxin as a new Series 5 card, Elsa Bloodstone as a returning Series 5 card, and Zabu as a returning Series 4 card. As much as it hurts my bounce-loving heart to say it, I think I got to give the Spotlight Cash a pretty poor 2 out of 5 star rating. Toxin is really the only appealing thing about it, and if you're not a bounce enjoyer like myself, it probably makes this cash week an easy skip. Elsa Bloodstone sees some amount of fringe plays in decks featuring like Angela, Kitty Pryde, and like movement sub-themes, but even in a lot of those shells, she's been pushed out more and more as more powerful cards have been added to that package, and Zabu just quite ain't what he used to be since it was nerfed to on reveal. It is worth noting that the card does see some amount of play inside of Wiccan shells today, but even those aren't necessarily top tier. Our last October cash runs from the 29th through November 5th and contains Anti-Venom as a new Series 5 card, Supergiant as a returning Series 5 card, and Ghost Spider as a returning Series 4 card. Overall, the Spotlight Cash Week gets a fairly middling 2 out of 5 star rating from me, with Anti-Venom, the new card release, being the primary draw it contains. Supergiant sees fringe play in some controlling strategies or is like an anti-Sandman card, but not at any particularly high play rate. And Ghost Spider, while she is currently at the recording of this video a premium move enabler, it's definitely going to remain to be seen if she still is a desired card inside of that archetype after we get the new move cards dropping in the September season. Our first Spotlight Cash in the November season runs from the 5th through the 12th. It contains Fenris Wolf as a new Series 5 card, Annihilus as a returning Series 5 card, and Werewolf by Night as a returning Series 5 card. Overall, I'm going to give the Spotlight Cash Week the strongest possible rating of 5 out of 5 stars. Annihilus and Werewolf by Night are both what I would describe as archetype-defining cards, meaning if you want to play a deck that contains them, you absolutely have to have them, since a number of deck-building decisions get sculpted around their powerful effects. Fenris Wolf, similarly, I think is going to be an incredibly powerful effect if it releases with its current text box. Being able to activate Fenris Wolf while you Shang-Chi your opponent's massive card down is going to lead to some huge blowouts in the last turn of the game that no other 2 energy card is going to provide. For the last 3 weeks of the November season, I can't give full proper evaluations because we actually don't know the text boxes of any of the new cards releasing. On November 12th, we know the character Frigga is set to release, and on November 19th, we have Malkeith, but November 26th, there's not even a name/artwork placeholder yet. That being said, we do have an idea of what the returning cards might be, with Thena and Valentina running November 12th through the 19th. Copycat and Red Guardian running November 19th through the 26th, and Havoc and Legion running November 26th through December 3rd. Obviously, Thena is probably one of the more powerful 2 energy cards in the game, and I think she's a quite stellar pickup for anybody that's missing her in their collection. And then Copycat and Red Guardian are both very solid, generically good 3 energy cards that you can play in most spots. Valentina's a card that has a novel effect but isn't particularly powerful, and Havoc and Legion, while they both see plenty of play, are also Series 4 cards, which inherently makes any week that they're in Spotlight caches a little bit less worthwhile. The last thing to consider in these videos is not only which cards are in Spotlight caches, but which cards notably aren't, i.e. what should you consider picking up with your valuable collector's tokens, because they're not going to be coming up for keys over the next few months. In my opinion, the first and best card you could spend your collector's tokens on remains Nico Minoru. She sees play as a cornerstone in a variety of both powerful and fringe decks, and she's a unique effect that no other card can emulate. Similarly, Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, is another card in this vein that I think makes an excellent collector's token pickup if you were not a season pass enjoyer while she was around. Very similar to Nico Minoru, she's just a generically good card for her energy cost that can see play in a variety of places with good utility. Next up, Cassandra Nova as a Series 5 card and Darkhawk as a Series 4 card, I think are stellar pickups for your collector's tokens. These are cards that you can build your deck around with things like Korg and Rockslide, but they also act as powerful tech cards into big deck strategies such as Arishem and Thanos. Finally, never forget the absolute best Marvel Snap card to spend your valuable collector's tokens on is the one you are most looking forward to playing some games with. Remember that Marvel Snap is a game that you should be playing for fun, and don't let your resource optimization allow you to optimize the fun out of that game. Thanks for making it through to the end of the video. If you enjoyed my breakdown today, be sure to snap that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel here so you don't miss my monthly Spotlight Cache roundups like this, as well as my weekly features like Best Decks roundups, where we always keep tabs on the ever-changing Marvel Snap metagame.